me see, did I get it all? Good job. Did you go to the doctor yesterday? Yeah. And how was it? It was good. Good.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
This has come up fast, even though it's been a long time. So Carson, is Karen here, or are we just gonna?
I am here.
Okay, I just don't see you. Oh, there you are.
I'm here.
Okay. Do we have a is it after 8 or do we have a quorum?
How many people do we have on Carson?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yep, okay, we're good to go.
All right, let's I call the Smart Commute Metro North meeting to order. And the first matter on the agenda is the approval of June 2021 minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review them? Are there any changes, questions?
We need to do this because we didn't have a meeting in July, and we did get them sent out and the financials sent out last month, but we canceled the meeting at the last minute.
Right.
So we need a motion to approve, and then I want to talk about July.
All right. So,
Motion to approve June
all right. Do we
minutes.
hear a second?
Second.
Thanks, Deb. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Thank you. So I want to just remind everyone that we sent out, in lieu of a meeting, we sent out a July summary. And it probably was read by everyone, but it was the big news on the ETRP being dismissed, a little bit about our e-bike program, the community events that we have been participating in, the 3 videos that we produced for telework health, and then this grant opportunity that CDOT put out that we'll talk a little bit more about today. And I think we talked a little bit about drafting a letter to HPTE in support of the unsolicited proposal. I haven't done that yet. I have some mixed thoughts about doing that. It's moving through the process at CDOT. It hasn't been accepted by the executive director yet for phase 2. I'm not sure it's timely to send that letter yet. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to delay giving you the draft of that letter until I know what's happening at CDOT. I think it will move through to the next phase. And if it does, then we want to put a letter in. I think if we send a letter to CDOT right now, wanting them to consider this, it may be perceived as being a little hostile to the process because they're under consideration now, and the executive director of HPTE is trying to influence the executive director of CDOT's decision to move it forward. And so I think it might be perceived I think it's ill-advised at this time to send that. So if you are okay with that, I'm going to reserve doing that letter until we know I think we should know by the end of this month if it goes to phase 2, and I do believe it's going to go to phase 2. Phase 2 is where the proposer has to put in 50 grand, and then CDOT goes through with fairly significant analysis, asks financial questions, does some negotiation on some of the proposal, and then it goes through another process, which looks like spaghetti. I think I might have sent you that flow chart of if this, then this. And so that's really what I wanted to talk to you in person about, having sent that to you last month. And then entertain any questions on any of this stuff that we sent out in July that we didn't really have a meeting to discuss.
Thanks, thanks, Karen. Is there any questions? All right, I don't hear any. Shall we move to the treasurer's report?
Thank you.
Did you want to? Okay, good.
Okay. All right, nothing too unusual on this. The Colorado Energy Office e-bikes program is a different grant than our DRCOG CMAQ grant. But the monies are paid out of Smart Commute to this program and then reimbursed back to this program. So these are reimbursements for things that we've already paid for. And then St. Anthony North renewed their membership. I think if you look down here, there's really nothing unusual in either the deposits or debits. Ending balance was 38,739, and we also have a checking account that's a reserve account for the Flex Ride. And we got a check from the Colorado Community Action Association for $2,500 that is in that reserve account, got deposited this month. The reason they gave us that money was to offset deposits that are required for e-bike participants. As you know, we're targeting low income for the e-bikes, but we also require a $250 deposit. And that deposit goes into a reserve account, so that we can draw against that if there's damage to a bike or something has to be replaced or any of those things. And it goes back to the person depositing it when they're finished with the bike, when the program's finished in a year. However, Jean found that there were many people who just couldn't afford the deposit. And so she looked for some scholarships. And the first round of scholarships was 10 scholarships for $250 each. And we're putting that into the reserve account to take care of any issues that come up on any of the bikes. The money doesn't go back to the participants. In this case, it stays in the account and we use it for the next group if there's money left in the account. So it's a donation with special requirements, and we're putting that in with the Flex Ride account because the Flex Ride and the e-bikes are part of the same mobility program that we got funding from DRCOG for. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that. The rest is outstanding invoices. You know, we still have membership renewals that haven't come in, very slow this year. The first set of them came in really rapidly, second set not so rapidly, really having to beg, plea. And then all the others, the Broomfield Flex Ride match hasn't come in yet. And I've talked to the city manager a couple of times about this, and she assures me it's in the process. And the rest are just amounts that we put in. The Can Do Colorado telework grant has been submitted, and we haven't had any indication that that won't be approved and reimbursed. I think that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So Karen, can you elaborate a little bit on the requirements to receive that scholarship for the e-bikes?
Yeah, Jean really is in charge of that. And What she's determined is that because we're targeting low-income people who make a limited amount of money, the deposit is a barrier to them to get a bike.
Mhm.
But we have required that there's a deposit there. And the reason we've done that is to protect smart commutes, so that if there is something that we've got to pay for in addition to the bikes that are being purchased through this Can Do Colorado grant, that there's money there to offset it. And one of the issues that's difficult for me, but I understand it from Jean's point of view, is that there's no skin in the game for many of these participants if they don't give the $250. It was an executive decision to allow a third party to provide the deposit because of the barriers that people were finding that they just couldn't come up with $250.
Right.
And we did want to deploy those 10 bikes that we got in round one. We wanted to deploy them as fast as possible.
Okay.
So the requirement, they have to meet all the requirements to be part of the program. They have to work within 10 miles of, they have to live within 10 miles of where they work, or their first and final last 10 miles, so that they can use the e-bike to get there to work. They have to provide tax documents, and if they're in special programs, they have to provide those special program documents. She's pretty thorough in the way she vets the people. She's working with all the agencies that provide services to underpaid or low income participants, and she gets the names from them and then works backwards with them with their employer. So the essence of the program is still intact if we're able to provide those scholarships. And we were going to do case-by-case scholarships. And then when Colorado Community Action Association said, we'd like to underwrite your first 10 scholarships, they did not require us to pick and choose. They said they would do the first 10 to jumpstart our program. And so that's why we have those scholarships available without the participants having to put anything in. Now, the way the program works is they get 90 days to decide whether or not they're going to stay in the program. And at the end of 90 days, they can opt out and give the bike back, and then we'll use the $250 for any tune-ups or repairs or anything that come up. It's there's some things about the e-bike program that are probably foreseen by people who know e-bikes. And I remember Brumfield City Council member Liz Law Evans gave me a whole list of things that she has encountered riding an e-bike, and I passed that on to Jean. For one instance, they're very, very heavy, and they're heavy to lift onto a vehicle, and they're almost impossible to lift onto a bus. And so our initial thought, of course, was that they could ride a bus to where they need to go, put their bike on the bus, and then take the bike for the last mile. And it's simply not possible for people. For example, Jean can't lift her bike. She can't lift her bike onto her bike rack on her car to take the bike to community events. She ends up riding her bike to community events to show off the bike. She just isn't able to lift it. And I think this is true of almost everybody on the in the participant pool. A couple of other things. There are some tire blowouts. There are some things going on with the bikes that we didn't anticipate, nothing drastic, but that deposit money will offset the cost, so Smart Commute doesn't have to take it out of our operating funds.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, could I have a motion to accept the August Treasurer's report?
So moved.
Here a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Karen. Next we
Thanks.
have Thankful Thursday.
Thankful Thursdays. I'm going to turn this over to, let's see, I saw her on here, Tammy. Oh, there you are, Tammy. I see you. There you are. Tammy came up with Thankful Thursdays. Part of it is in response to membership Mondays that are competing TMO on in the Boulder side started, and we thought, that's a pretty good idea to recognize our members for what they do. And so Tammy came up with Thankful Thursdays. So Tammy, take it away.
In response to what Karen said, I'm doing a social media post to show our appreciation for our members every Thursday. So every Thursday we'll be highlighting a different member. Last Thursday was our Broomfield members. So we did a shout out to our Broomfield Chamber, City County Broomfield and Sustainable Broomfield, just to show our appreciation and how much we rely on their support and how much we appreciate it. So each Thursday will be a separate member. So watch our social media and we'll be honoring a new one tomorrow.
All right, great. Thank you.
We have about 30 members that pay into Smart Commute. And so I think we'll be randomly selecting those members to just thank them for their investment and for their participation. So keep an eye on this space and see if your membership is in there in the future.
So when you say random, what does that mean exactly?
It means Tammy's going to choose. It means Tammy's going to pin the tail on the donkey and say, all right, we did somebody from Brimfield this time. Let's do somewhere else. And so
throw this paper up and grab one, right?
Yeah.
Pin the tail on the donkey.
Yeah.
I'm teasing. Yeah, that's fine.
I guess what I'm saying is we don't have a rhyme or reason for how we're choosing them other than the first one, which our competitor highlighted Broomfield Chamber, which is so ironic because they do nothing with the chamber, but it's commuting solutions. And we have struggled with commuting solutions for years. They try to take over our territory and it has not been a great relationship with them. And we have partnered so much with Broomfield Chamber. And when they threw out, Membership Monday, thanks so much for the Broomfield Chamber. What a great member we have. And we thought, dang it, we're going to have to recognize them, but we also have City and County Broomfield and Sustainable Broomfield. And we'll do McQuinney in a separate, we didn't want to lump McQuinney, even though it's a Broomfield company, didn't want to lump it with these. We want to give them a highlight separately, but we have a number of great, St. Anthony North and United Power. There are lots and lots of great examples of our membership. So yeah, pin the tail on the donkey.
See, I thought she would have retired by now, but hangs on, doesn't
We every year we have our fingers crossed that she'll move on and not be the thorn in our side, but it never stops. So
yeah, she's comfortable where she's at. So.
Oh yeah.
I know. All right, Karen, let's talk about number 4.
Yes. All right. So as you know, we've been looking and looking for office space ever since we got kicked out of the Adams County building.
Yeah.
And we can't find any, we thought we had a deal with North Glen, and then and thank you so much for helping with that, Joyce. And it turned out that there wasn't space after all. And so we've been working out of our homes, which is okay. We've had the opportunity to work with ACE Rep to go in and use their offices occasionally when we want to have a meeting. And we have the staff meetings at my house. And everything that Smart Commute owns is in my garage, on my side of the garage. And every time we do an outreach, somebody, Carson or Tammy or Kit, comes to my house, weeds through my garage, finds our boxes, loads their car up, and then brings it back, and we put it back. It's getting old. So we talked this week and we will, we're going to rent a locker, a storage locker, and put everything in there so that it's a central location for people to go pick up the stuff if they're doing an outreach. I don't have to be home to let them in. And we don't have to continue to shuffle through all the other stuff I have in my garage. And then because we don't have a business location, we've been using my address as our smart commute address. I'm not real comfortable with that. And one of the reasons we didn't do a PO box is because CDOT is very particular in auditing PO boxes. They have put in place some upgraded system that flags PO boxes for audit. Just because it's too easy to send a payment to a PO box, it's easier to scam. So Tammy looked into it, and we can get basically a mailbox through, is it
It's UPS.
UPS, but has an actual physical address. And so we're going to switch over to that address so that stuff that comes through, we don't get a lot of mail. Almost everything we get is direct deposit, so that's not going to be an issue. But we do occasionally get stuff. IRS, sends stuff. They send refunds, or they send, they keep sending me a change of address form because there are still things going to the 12200 Pecos Street, and then somebody informs them that that's not there, and then they send me a return address thing. It's just become very complicated, and so we're going to do that instead. So those administrative changes are underway, and then we're talking about succession planning at Smart Commute. And when we have a strategy for that, we're going to come back to you and tell you about it. And I think then I should just remind all of you that we have a big anniversary coming up. February 1st will have been in business for 10 years.
Wow.
So yeah, I know. Who would have thunk it?
Mhm.
Through thick and thin and pestilence and disaster. So we're also thinking about what do we do for that big 10-year anniversary. So just wanted to tell you that when we meet on Mondays to have our staff meetings, we can fill 3 hours easily just talking to each other and strategizing and thinking about stuff and trying to do things more efficiently. And so wanted to put that on as an item today, and happy to answer questions.
Okay. Any questions? Don't hear any, Karen. So thank
Okay.
you. I just can't believe we're closing in on 10 years. I just cannot,
Yeah.
Yay!
Yes, yay. And thanks to Jean and Jean, who worked so hard to get that grant from Dr. Cog to get us started, and City of Thornton, who really covered us for a year. They paid the bills and they did all the administration and, helped with all the legal stuff that we had to do to incorporate ourselves and all that. So, yeah, we'll have to send Thornton a big thank you card. We'll write one up and send it to everybody. Joyce Hunt is still there. I talked to her the other day about
Oh,
something.
really?
And I said, Joyce, are you still there? And she's, yes. Are you still there? And I'm like, yes.
I
So
thought you retired.
He says
she's
that
still
every
there.
year. I've heard
Yeah,
that for 4 years.
yeah, she's fabulous. And so, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, next on the agenda is outreach activities.
I think that's Carson. Is that you, Carson, or Tammy?
That's me. We can always tag team if I leave something out. We just wanted to highlight just how successful our community outreach has been this year as opposed to last year, since we decided to kind of refocus our efforts on biking specific events mostly this year. And it's been really nice to get out and ride with folks. So I crossed out some of the ones that we've been a part of, and you guys know about these, right? Baseline back in June, a great bike event there. And then into July, we were able to participate in the Sorting Through Thornton scavenger hunt. And I actually just dropped off a couple of our bike lights that we had co-branded last year with RTD for grand prizes for some of their bike scavenger hunt folks. So we're excited to get pictures back from them. And then supporting Brighton through their city barbecue and all of their full moon bike rides every month. And then, so last month, Tammy and I went to Brighton for their full moon bike ride again. And then this month, or excuse me, this Saturday, we have another bike rodeo in Thornton. So we're going to go up there and help kids learn how to ride bikes and interact with the community members that are interested in biking. I see Gene has his hand up. I'm happy to pause and take a question.
I'd like to make a comment. If you look at the image that's there on the screen, 3 people are wearing high visibility vests. And I'm glad to see that because bicyclists need to be seen to have safety.
Sure, of course, it's always important. I think those are encouraged at all of those bike rides is to wear high-vis clothing or have reflective gear, of course. And I think those specific ones are the leaders of the ride, but we always encourage high visibility clothing or vests if you don't have anything that is kind of like this Kodak jersey that's nice and high visibility. So I think the last thing we'll do here is kind of go through some photos just so you guys can see.
Can I stop you for 1 second and say there's one missing, and that's while you were out. Tammy and I did the Broomfield Night Out. And we brought
that's right.
Yeah, and we brought the e-bike. Jean was there and we had the e-bike. It was a huge success. There were, I don't know how many hundreds of people at that event. And we had constant conversation with people. And I don't know whether it was because it was a nice evening or whether people just needed to get out or whether they really were interested in transit again and biking again, but that was a really successful one that we had. I think that might have been August 2nd or something like that. We should put that on the list. Yeah, I should have caught that when you sent me the slides yesterday, and I didn't think about it till just now. And then I think we should just ask Jessica about the Thornton Harvest Fest. I see that's coming up, but we don't have any information on that and whether or not that might be a good one for us to do outreach on as well.
I can connect you guys with Chris Steinke. He's right now the interim director. So I'll just connect who, Carson or Tammy?
Carson, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Thanks, Carson. That's all I had. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I think I was leaving town that day, so I apologize. I left that one off, but it was a great event. I had the same experience in Brighton at their barbecue, just constant talking to people. I think people are hungry to talk to folks. On to some pictures. Those are always the fun ones. Here's Jean talking to folks about their e-bike program in Brighton. They had some folks that lived down in our 144th area that were interested in the program. So she was educating them on that and at the July Brighton ride. And then just a few days ago, here's Tammy and I in the dark handing out our bike light winner. He's actually a City of Brighton employee that attends their Brighton bike rides. So happy to see him with a bike light to be safe out there on the streets. And then here's the Brighton City Barbecue. Keep going. Here's Tammy with our bike light winner at the Thornton Bike Rodeo. Cute kid. It's a great selfie to show folks getting out there in the community. And then here they are on that wonderful air quality day. It looks
and it was
nice
very windy.
Yeah.
You
It was
guys
a
are
beautiful day.
brave for getting out there. I'm sure it was a good event. I hate I missed it. And then here's just some good regular riders at the July North Glen full moon bike ride. Let's see what's next. Of course, coming up next month is, geez, in 28 days, believe it or not, Bike to Work Day 2021. Back in the saddle is kind of the theme this year. We're working with all of our station planners kind of around the region to get some stations going back up and running this year. And we're going to be delivering posters and printed materials later this week, early next week from Dr. Cog to make sure that folks know where to go when they're on the trails. And we're excited to get back out there and support Bike to Work Day in a safe and healthy way. This year we we plan to have stations with, hopefully with St. Anthony North, North Glen, of course, Ace Rep, if you guys do the Welby station, and Longmont and Brighton are all doing stations as well. I'm sure I may have missed some along the way, but we've been busy trying to support everybody in every way that we can to get Bike to Work Day back up and running this year. I think
Carson,
that's all.
are we doing one of those, in the past, we've done a meeting to allow people in the North End to get information about station planning and all of that kind of thing. And I'm just wondering, are we doing that again this year?
We're not doing an in-person meeting. There's been some virtual meetings, and I've been communicating with folks virtually, and I'll be delivering typically at those meetings, at least the ones that I've been a part of. We've been handing out a lot of materials so that you're ready to go for a station. And I'm going to be personally delivering those this year instead of hosting kind of a meeting just for COVID considerations. And we don't have office space.
I know they appreciate that, because the other option is for them to go downtown to Dr. Cog and pick up the stuff. And we've always been a conduit for them. We get the stuff and we'll disperse it. So thank you for doing that. Did want to say on number 9, which is other, you know, that day is a smart commute day, September 22nd. And I'd just like some direction from the board on whether we want to cancel the September smart commute meeting or reschedule it to the 29th, which is the last Wednesday of the month, or invite you to come to one of the Bike to Work Day stations and hang out with us. So just mull on that a little bit, and by the end of the meeting we'll make a decision on that, but we'd like to have some direction. So 3 options, you know, cancel it, postpone it till the 29th, or invite all of you to participate in our community outreach at the different, they're early. What time is it? 6:30? Do we start in the morning? Yeah, it's early. We might have a bike home. Is there a bike home event?
St. Anthony North is planning to host a later in the afternoon station for their shift change, kind of around that 4 to 6 time frame. So I think that will be our afternoon event.
Great.
Okay. All right. Any other updates on that, Karen, before we move on?
No, I think Carson's the guru of our outreach.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carson. Thank you. Okay, next.
Raising my hand. Sorry.
Oh,
This
Sorry.
This is a question. Since we've been talking about bikes and love the emphasis on cycling and biking, I think that's awesome. One of the conversations we've had previously a little bit is about that whole sort of network of biking, protected bike lanes. And I'm just curious to know what we have been doing as Smart Commute Metro North to sort of identify gaps in what should be a robust interconnected bike network. And I think in one of the events, maybe Gene or somebody at Smart Commute brought over a map showing our existing bike lanes. And what's nice is that there's a lot to work with. Mm-hmm. What's unfortunate is that there are a lot of gaps in the system. And I'm just curious to know, have we made any progress? What from a Smart Commute perspective, what can we do to try and fill in some of those gaps? I think to me, that's critical for getting more people on their bikes and out of cars.
Mm-hmm.
I can start if you want.
Well, let me start if you don't mind. And that is that we're glad you brought this up, because we have taken that very seriously, and we have gone after a grant to help us do exactly that. So I can move into that grant pursuits update with how we think we'll be able to accomplish what you're asking, and also how we're going to pay for it. And so I'll defer back to Tammy to finish what she was going to say about what we're doing at these outreach events. And then we'll, if you don't mind, we'll roll into the grant pursuits update. I just got up and went and looked at my grant folder to make sure I can tell you what it is we're doing, because we've written it all out and we've already set it in. So
sounds good. Thank you.
So I guess I'll jump in and say, at our outreach events that Tammy and I have been going to, we have those maps that have all of our bike lanes that we are aware of at the regional level for each community, and then obviously at a regional scale. And we've been asking folks to interact with those maps at these biking events and fill out the gaps. So at the end of the summer, Kyle, we'll be able to compile that information. While the engagement isn't as robust as we would love it to be, I think those that are really interested in biking are biking a lot, are the ones that are engaging, which is probably good because they have an intimate knowledge with the trail system themselves. So we'll be compiling all that information and submitting it to all of our partner municipalities, counties, and then DRCOG at the regional level for both additions of new trails that maybe aren't included and those gaps, of course.
That sounds good. And Carson, if you don't mind, I'd love to maybe be part of that conversation before it gets submitted, if that's okay.
Of course.
Thank you.
Tammy, you're going to give an update.
I was just going to say that also, I think I talked to you about this a little bit, Kyle. I'm also working with Broomfield Wayfinding Group, and they're identifying the signage to connect trails in Broomfield to Westminster and Thornton on either side of them. I've also worked on Thornton's group to identify, I'm part of their group that's identifying the gaps in Thornton, and then also on Highway 7. For the bike lanes, protected bike lanes for that. So we're pretty connected through the whole north there, trying to get everything connected. That's all I was going to add.
That's great. Thanks, Tammy. Tammy's been really good about being on the technical advisory committee of so many of our jurisdictions, and the one she doesn't cover, Carson covers, and then Kit always covers North Glen. So
Jessica?
Yeah.
Jessica.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Tammy, do you know where City of Thornton is on their Wayfinder, whatever that thing is called, that program,
Thornton?
where they're supposed to be identifying all those gaps?
They had their we had our last working group meeting last month, and the consultant is compiling all that information, and they're going to start doing some public outreach meetings to get the public to weigh into that. The working group we whittled it all down so it was more specific. So we had more specific maps and everything to present to the public.
Okay. And that was funded through one of those DRCOG pieces, right?
That it's part of their master plan that they're doing updates on.
Oh, it's through the master plan. Okay, I thought we got money through that. Didn't we get money through DRCOG for that too, for the Wayfinders program?
Maybe.
That I don't know.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And Karen, just a comment more than anything, what we're hearing over here is a lot of folks are having safety issues, especially with the increase of homeless in the area. I know we can't, how do we address that, and make people comfortable?
If I had a solution for that, I would have a permanent job for life.
Yeah.
It's tough. I'll tell you, at CDOT, we've worked really hard with Adams County because a lot of homeless live on right-of-way of CDOT that's in Adams County. Mm-hmm. And in the last year and a half, we've worked together, Paul DeSitis and the chief of staff and me and Steve Odorizio and the Attorney General's office. And Adams County proposed a pilot program to us. The way it works before this pilot program was any county would call us and say, we have a homeless problem on your right of way. We need you to come and clean it up. And we had, it's in our asset management budget. Mm-hmm. So there's only about $50,000 per year allocated to that. And because we're in Region 1, every area in Region 1 starts asking for that, and you get on a list. And if Adams County identifies a homeless camp as it starts, by the time we get to it, it's a full-blown homeless camp with mail
Right.
delivery, you know? I mean, that's how bad it gets. So Adams County came to us and said, why don't you give us permission to go in and clean up the homeless camp when we see it? And we'll bill you. And they would bring the sheriff in, they'd bring HHS in, they would bring an agency to rehome homeless people in a temporary shelter. They would provide all those things that a county can provide, and then they would give CDOT the bill. And the benefit to this is the bill's much smaller than if we waited until CDOT could get to it. And so it took quite a long time to do the intergovernmental agreement to say what they could do, what they couldn't do, what they'd be responsible for, what CDOT would be responsible for. It's so interesting because some of that IGA called out things like they will not dispose of a dead body if they find one, that they're not responsible for that. They're not responsible if they find a meth lab on the premises. It's pretty inclusive, thinking about all the worst case scenarios. And so we finally signed that IGA. And then in this budget session for next year, CDOT has put in $1 million to do this pilot program throughout Region 1, because they feel like this is a way to handle this. What happens within the trail system of Adams County or Broomfield County or anybody else is still in the throes of, or the responsibility of the county or the city where they're at. And so I don't know how you address that for safety reasons.
Mhm.
And it's an issue that's not going to go away. And it's an issue that's, Front Range wide. And in fact, Grand Junction and Durango and other places like that are having the same kinds of issues.
Yeah, I just don't know what the answer is. I do know though, however, that many of the folks that used to use certain trails have stopped doing that now, so, and have found alternative ways. So
Well, Big Dry Creek down into Denver is another one. There's drug dealers on that
Mhm.
route, and you can ride your bike as you go into Denver, and you can see drug deals happening right in front of you. You can see all the trash and homelessness and animals, dogs that people have that are aggressive, those kinds of things. So it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
It doesn't help things when we're trying to encourage people to get out and take their bikes.
I know. Yeah. Okay. Well, I just thought I'd throw that in, because it is a big problem at this, everywhere, when we try to encourage folks to be on the trails, what the answer is, I have no idea, so. All right. If there's no other comments, I will move on the agenda then to grant pursuits.
Update. Yeah, so I'm happy to talk about that. As you know, we did 3 videos. We're waiting to get paid for those. Those are telework wellness videos. I think we've sent the links out to all of you. We're waiting to get paid for those, and then they'll be dispersed to everyone. Broomfield Chamber helped us with those. They were kind of our research group. They looked at what we did, gave us some input. They really didn't give us a lot of input because we got a very qualified, well-spoken person to talk to us about the wellness, and they're really well done. I think they're short enough, 10 minutes, that you could watch any of them, and all of them. We'll have those up on our website, and we'll disperse them to all the communities in NADA as well. So we're waiting for that one. We have another one that we just sent in, and this is the one that speaks to Kyle's question. CDOT allocated $60,000 to each TMO, up to $60,000 to enhance TDM, starting in October and going through June of next year. And we put together a proposal that lets us do a number of things. One is to rebrand ourselves, to update and retrofit our website so it's more interactive. That allows us to do Google Translate for people who don't speak English as their first language. And one of the important components is to put this bike map process together. And this will give us money to convene local stakeholders in conjunction with what we're doing at the public outreach where we're asking for input. It will engage local bike advocates and enthusiasts to input their comments into a draft bike map that we're putting together. It will evaluate in-kind partners who could help us put a physical map together, because we have heard from many bike riders that even though they use an app or they use their Google Maps on their phone, sometimes they like to have a small pocket map that connects them throughout the North Metro area. And so we've looked at some models. We think we know what would be a good option for that. And then we will be finishing that out, hopefully being able to pay for this bike map and then market it to everybody. So we have parlayed some of this 60 grand into finishing this task that we've been asked at Smart Commute to do, that we simply haven't had the money or the manpower to do. And this will allow us to dedicate a person to doing this sort of thing. So we won't have it right away, but we're hoping that by June of next year, we'll have made a pretty big dent in it. And yeah, pretty excited about that. That was unexpected that we would get an additional 60 grand. And then Carson was saying that he was at the TAC meeting this week. And Carson, do you want to tell them what you heard about upcoming increases to our grant funding that we get from DRCOG?
Sure. So I heard the proposed kind of MOU tip funding cycle that comes down to us, and they're proposing a $20,000 per TMA increase, as well as some funding to fund the West Corridor TMA as an additional TMA in our region. But that $20,000, while still in the process and needs to be approved by the board, I think there's good reasoning for that, and there should be I don't see any hangups with that moving forward. So I think that's good news and reflects the work that we're doing and in terms of how we're trying to fight air quality issues in the state in response to ETRP getting taken away for now.
Is that 2024 to 2026? Is that what the timing on that is?
That's right. I should have mentioned that. 2024 to 2026. That's right.
So that would be October 2023 is fiscal year change. So, and then we now get 100 grand a year from DRCOG's partnership. That would give us probably 110 per year. Then if it's 20 for it's a 2-year cycle that we get. We're in the process now of writing up the next MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with DRCOG. I don't think it'll change a lot. We may add another person, staff person. As you know, Carson and I are the 2 full-time people, and Kit and Tammy are both part-time. And I have told them that they could have more hours, and they both say, no. Bless their hearts. They work way more than I pay them, I'm quite sure. But they only turn in their hours for a certain amount, and that's what we pay them. So, and then also, as we're looking to 2022, our RTD marketing partnership grant is coming up. And the year before we got 20 grand a year. And then last year they cut it to 15 because we weren't able to do so many public outreach events. We had a hard time using up the whole 15 this year. We're going to do it, and we'll never leave money on the table. But we were told that the amount won't be cut next year. It'll be 15 again. So I guess 15 is where they're comfortable. They're having to add another TMO, I think. So in order to fit the budget, the TMOs will all get 15. And that grant's very specified as to what we can use it for and what we have to do in order to get it. And but we've been doing it for years. That's an easy grant for us. We know how to pull that money out of there. So, and I think that was what I had down here. Was there anything else, Carson, that you can think of in our grants pursuit? We're still, we're still waiting for the approval of the 60K that has the bike piece in it. What they do is we send it in, then they come back with questions. We've just answered a series of questions. We understood it's not competitive. We're not competing against others for this, that everybody, all the TMOs are eligible for 60K, and that we just have to be very specific in how we're going to use it and how we're going to meet the TDM, increased TDM, transportation demand management requirements.
All right.
That's all I've got on that one.
All right, thanks. Let's move on then to greenhouse gas rulemaking.
Okay, so I've got a presentation here from CDOT, and I'm just going to go through it really fast because I think it's important information. It came from our Transportation Commission meeting. It's really talks about the greenhouse gas rulemaking, how the public will be involved, and then as the public is involved, what happens to the proposed rule. Next slide. So if you remember 1261 required the greenhouse gas roadmap, and housed in CDOT's existing rules says that we're required to do rule changes or make the transportation planning rules for CDOT and metropolitan planning organizations. For those of you who aren't acronym geeks and know all the acronyms, MPO is Metropolitan Planning Organization, and DRCOG, Denver Regional Council of Governments, is ours. There are several in the state, and in the areas where there aren't MPOs, there's something called TPRs, which is Transportation Planning Regions, that pull together many counties into a planning region. So they're not big enough for a metropolitan planning organization, but they're more of like a multiple county planning organization. And then, so in this rulemaking, it lists everybody who is a MPO or a TPR or any of the agencies that will be affected. So that's where it says no significant changes to other planning rules. All right. And then you can see it frames real estate schools. Okay, next slide. All right. We can just go through this. We can just leave this slide, but really this is about the definitions that we're using that are sometimes ambiguous to others. They're not ambiguous to transportation planners. Jean knows all of these terms, and Jessica serving on DRCOG and Joyce serving on DRCOG. So these are projects that have these definitions, and we've defined the definitions. The one I think that is important is regionally significant project, which is referenced in 260 and determines what projects are to be included in modeling. And regional significant projects are large projects like highways and interchanges. They're not projects that would be internal to your own cities that are local roads. Next slide. I don't think you need this. This is you can just read it, but I think the important one here is the reduction levels that are specific. So they're called out, the reduction amount. I'll show you a chart in a minute. And then if the levels can't be made, there are options to add additional greenhouse gas mitigation measures that are called out as including but not limited to. So we'll see that in a minute. Okay, so these are the greenhouse gas reduction levels. And as you can see, Dr. Cogg's 2025 baseline projects, and then the reduction level. And the reduction level goes up as the years go through. And then here are the other MPOs, North Front Range and Pikes Peak and Grand Valley. So you can see all of these. All right. It's pretty technical stuff that was arrived at through our arrangement with both CDPHE and Colorado Energy Office. Okay, next one. All right. So the concept is explained in the regulation. There's a very lengthy preamble that talks about why we're doing this. And then this mitigation the mitigation pieces that I just spoke about gives examples of measures, and we inserted including but not limited to, because since this is a very long term, it's till 2050, things are going to change pretty rapidly. And once EVs have a bigger saturation and other things are being done, you know, we don't know yet in the future what else might be a good mitigation measure. So we inserted those pieces in the language as well. And I think for Kyle, maybe, and other developers, it's good news because encouraging equitable transit-oriented development. And we have the discussion at CDOT about chicken and the egg. You know, Broomfield did a master plan, and I know Thornton has one as well, that calls out transportation connections, transit connections, and yet you have RTD who don't give you service. And then you have, and then you have, you know, CDOT saying, well, let's make sure that we put affordable housing next to transit. And we all know that once you put transit in, the cost of that land becomes greater, and it's more difficult to insert affordable housing in a transit-oriented development. So it's better to be able to plan for that stuff and then get transit, but we have to have a willing partner to provide the transit. And I'm hoping that these kinds of rulemaking will have some effect on our regional transportation district to, in fact, give transit to where it needs to go. And then encouraging equitable transit development and encouraging more efficient vertical land use and parking. And I know Kyle's development has considered all of that. And the chicken and the egg thing, of course, is when you have development plans in North Glen or in Thornton or in Broomfield or anywhere else, sometimes the densities, when you increase the densities or improve vertical development, the community is uncomfortable with that. And so it's a combination of doing what you can here and also changing public policy to accommodate this. So it's a big effort, I think, on the part of the state of Colorado to figure out how do we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And the issue that has been the sticky wicket is the land use issue that comes with this greenhouse gas rule. Next slide. So CDOT is part of this as well. And the good news, bad news about this is that under this greenhouse gas rule, expanding highways is going to be very difficult. Making improvements on I-25 is going to be more difficult, but there are ways to accomplish this, and that's by including mitigation efforts like affordable housing or transit service or bike and pedestrian facilities or pedestrian bridges and those kinds of things. So they will have to, both CDOT and Dr. Cog will have to submit their transportation report drafts, and then the APCD, tell me what it is again. Carson, do you have it? Tammy, you have
It's
it.
Air Pollution Control Division.
Right. We have so many acronyms. AQCC, ADP, you know, and then if APCD doesn't respond, it indicates they're in agreement to adopt the planning document. So both agencies have to produce a planning document that says these are the projects that are coming out. And while DRCOG already does this and CDOT already does this, it will have some different constraints than it's had in the past. All right, next slide. All right. So this is a sticky wicket, and I'm thinking that when we do these public hearings that we may hear quite a bit. We have heard on the task force quite a bit about this, but if either CDOT or MPO can't demonstrate that these reduction levels are met after a period of time, which is 2025, the Transportation Commission can restrict the use of pass-through funds. And some of the pass-through funds are like CMAQ, Congestion Mitigation Air Quality, which funds us, and STIP money, State Transportation Improvement Plan funding. And STB and STGB. And then that money that was discretionary before to use as you wanted would be directed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It sounds more onerous than it is. It doesn't mean that those funds will stay with CDOT. It means that CDOT will direct those funds toward mitigation plans instead of however the DRCOG wants to use them or however CDOT wants to use them. Looks like Jean has a question.
Yeah, Jean?
I have a concern with air quality. We, in the last month, have seen our air quality take a nosedive, and a major part of it is not in our own making, which is the smoke coming in from California.
Sure, that comes up a lot. And we're not measuring that air quality. We're measuring greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles. And you can certainly make that comment when we have the public hearings. We do hear that a lot, but I've been told that we are not measuring air quality. We're measuring emissions from, it's a different kind of a measurement. So we
PM10.
understand that, yeah, we understand that a lot of that smog and pollution is airborne from the West Coast over. And I'm not a scientist, so I don't know exactly how they do that, but they've heard that a lot, and that's under consideration here. Next slide.
I have a concern the public does not understand when they say air quality and then they can see the smoke, that there's a difference.
You bet. And we hear that a lot.
And the AQC and others need to start thinking about getting the public to focus on all of it, not just one part of it. Because they sit there and say, oh, we got to reduce the air quality because it's poor. And then somebody comes to a meeting and says, oh, that's not counted. It doesn't make sense.
Well, I think your comment should go to the commission. We're having public hearings and they'll take all that into consideration. This is the rule. This is the proposed rule. That's why it's out there. It's going to be 45 days of comment, and I'm hoping we get robust comment that allows AQCC to consider some changes or something besides transportation. Transportation is the biggest factor in greenhouse gas emissions. It carries the most it carries the most of the emissions. So that's why we're focusing on transportation. Then, yeah.
Karen, it's Lisa Huff. Sorry, there was just a good story this morning on Colorado Public Radio. I put the link in the chat for other people to look at. They compared the smoke to the ozone levels. So just some research. I haven't gone deeper into it. I'm not saying yay or nay on it, but it was just interesting to listen to this morning.
You bet. And one of the good things is, people are starting to become aware of this is a big issue for Colorado. I mean, when we can't breathe and when we can't see, and no matter what's causing it, it's a huge issue. So, right. Kyle.
Yeah, you said something earlier. I just want to make sure I understood. Do you believe that, and by the way, I think this is absolutely critical for our air quality, but do you believe that this will have maybe an unintended consequence of our being able to get the managed lanes north from, Northwest Parkway north to Fort Collins, or at least where they currently are being installed?
No, there are some exclusions, and projects that are already underway will have some exclusions. What it will do is we'll have to analyze what the construction adds to pollution, and we'll have to do some other analysis, but it won't stop the managed lanes. It won't stop Central 70. It won't stop the Gap. This is for new projects that are being proposed out there. I'm assuming it's not going to stop I-25 segment 2 and 3 improvements, but it may restrict the ability to add new lanes.
And would that also factor into the Highway 7 improvements, east,
yes,
west?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It will. So the thing about Highway 7, of course, is it's a multimodal solution for Highway 7. And so the offset, of course, is transit and bike lanes, those kinds of things. So it's not just expansion of general purpose lanes. The footprint will have things like lane balancing and that offset with transit and bike. So I think all of these projects will certainly be scrutinized and analyzed, but I don't think it'll stop any of them. In fact, it might improve them significantly.
That's just where I was going to go. Last question. Could this actually cause a rejiggering of the priorities of projects, and those that have some other mobility options might rise in priority relative to those that don't?
Yeah, and there might be some more funding allocated to those kinds of projects, because I know that CDOT is bumping up the transit funds that they have. So they're looking at using not just the money from 260, not just faster safety money, not just infrastructure money, but also transit monies now, because a significant amount of transit money is coming in. So like the Highway 7 Mobility Hub that got $14 million, that's transit funding. It's in order to accommodate transit to Highway 7 and I-25. So it's a first step.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I was skeptical at first, but having sat through about 9 months of these meetings, it's the right thing to do. The implementation and the education, like Jean says, really important stuff. And that's for the Air Quality Control Commission to weigh in on. And then all of the public outreach that we're doing, I've been hearing public outreach comments for the last 9 months, but this will be general public, not just a task force comments. And so you can see the commission may waive restrictions on specific projects. Demonstrate that such a waiver will not result in substantial increase in GHG. So if there's a waiver, that there is mitigation on the other side of that. So I think we just talked about that. If there's other components, a waiver could be allocated to a specific project. And this is all pretty non-specific at this point because they're general rules. All right. So a press release was sent out. I think a lot of you got that press release. We will send that to you as well. We have a packet that got sent to us that we can forward. They're doing social media. So the State Transportation Advisory Committee, the GHG, advisory group, MPO, state legislators, stakeholders that sign into the website, and other people that have joined our early comments on how to put this rule together have all been sent this stuff. And then there's a Q&A document that got posted last week. And so we have that as well for you. I have to say that the general comment so far has been what you think. The environmentalists say we don't go far enough, that this is a drop in the bucket. It's not good enough. We're not being as proactive as we need to be. And then others like truckers and small municipalities and rural areas, industries that are ag industries, those kinds of things are saying it's too much. So it's probably a pretty good rule. Nobody likes it, but we're going to come out in the middle. It's something we've got to do. We've got to do it. All right, next one. So here it's prominently on the CDOT website. You can see, you go on to CDOT and it's right there in the front, proposed rules and public hearing information. Next slide. Here are the public meetings we're going to have. I think I'm doing the Lyman and the Fort Collins meeting, and then we have a task force of 3 at the Transportation Commission that worked on this rule. They will be in person and virtual. And so we're encouraging people to come to any and all of these. They'll tell us about the concepts, and then there's opportunity for public. And we have a hearing officer who will conduct these meetings. And then we'll have somebody taking the minutes of all of these so that we can get some feedback on this. So it's going to be from the 14th, which is the earliest we can do it, because once the rule is given to the Secretary of State, you have to wait for 15 days in order to have the public hearings. And then we'll finish up in Glenwood Springs on October 4th. All right, next slide. So this is the rulemaking. So in July, we started authorizing the rulemaking, and then we went through the process, fine-tuned it, rewrote it, made some edits, and then we submitted it to the Secretary of State on the 13th of August. And then we can start our public hearings on the 14th. And then you look through, the Transportation Commission is expected to adopt the revised rule or the current rule, however it comes out, at their November 18th Transportation Commission meeting. And then it'll go into effect January 14th. It's interesting, we have very few comments on our Transportation Commission meetings. Generally, the comments are germane to whatever the action is for that day, if it's a condemnation or if it's an award for a revitalizing Main Street or something like that. At this last meeting, we had over 30 people talk about greenhouse gas rules. And as you can imagine, most of them were in favor, but a handful of them weren't. And so I anticipate we'll get lots of this. Next slide. Is that it? Oh, there you go. So it just talks about how we started this in January. We held 11 regional meetings, 5 state listening sessions, and individual stakeholders. My gosh, we just met with everybody, and we did have some early information at NADA on this. And then the white paper is available here. And you'll find that on the CDOT website as well. Kyle?
Sorry, one other question. Is there a certain threshold? I mean, these greenhouse gas rules are, and I may have missed it, are they based upon, are they project specific, and are they CDOT project specific? What I'm trying to get at is, to what extent do these rules actually impact a local municipality's ability to develop their own infrastructure, which ties into the larger CDOT infrastructure? Is there such an impact?
Yes. So the answer is yes, but it's through DRCOG. So DRCOG has to have projects that are of regional significance in their list of projects for the catchment area of DRCOG. And they do a plan, a TIP plan, that then has to be submitted. So local roads, like your local roads, won't be impacted by this. Bromfield's local roads won't. But if they're looking for federal funding or state funding to do their project through DRCOG, for all the communities that they represent, I don't know how many it is now, 53 or something like that, Jessica.
Yeah.
Something like that. You know, they have to come up with a plan that has a number that includes all the projects within the TIP. And so they have to be able to reduce that group of projects emissions. And they have to have a plan for that. So they do all the modeling. It's very scientific. They have modelers at DRCOG who go through and do air quality modeling and do VMT modeling and emissions modeling. So they're going to be good because they're going to know what they need to do in order to attain the reduction that we're looking for. And we have modelers at CDOT that we have pulled over from DRCOG. So we're all working through the same modeling. And so these aren't, these reductions are based in science and not, they're not discriminatory to any one project, or they're not focusing on any one project. I think if CDOT had had its way and the Colorado Energy Office and CDPHE and all of those, they would have preferred to have put this rule in place, I'm going to say 10 years ago, before 470 was built, before the Central 70 was built, before North I-25 was being built, and before the Gap was being built, because all of those are significant expansions to the roadway that will increase greenhouse gas. And I'm sure all of you are thinking, okay, well, what about VMT reductions from transportation demand management? Every year we manage to reduce some of those, but they're always offset by Colorado growth, always. And we have population growth that comes in. I think all of that is factored in. It's not, it's very complicated in that there is so much we can do, but on the other side, there are offsets that we don't have control over unless we shut our state down to new populations. So it's a very in-depth conversation that got us to this piece.
Thank you.
Oh. And I think there's one or two more, not very many. Oh, this just says who the advisory group is. So if you look, we had a whole lot of people, Mesa County and Phillips County and Colorado Forum, Pikes Peak. Commissioner Hall is from Grand Junction. I'm from here. I'm looking to see who else. North Front Range, Colorado, Contractors Association. We had a lot of stakeholders that met 2 or 3 times a week as this rule was being put together for us to comment. And of course, I always comment about, we can do as much as we can at TMOs, and population offsets what we're able to do. So they've heard this over and over. Next slide. And then here are the stakeholder meetings that we've had in the past. Next slide. And then this is the feedback that we've gotten. And some of this you'll hear, impacts to rural areas. But since it only applies to regionally significant projects, it will capture larger projects and not small rural projects. So like asphalt paving and putting in new shoulders, fixing culverts, those kinds of things won't be affected. Enforcement is really alternative compliance option. And that is looking at offsets that we talked about, like transit availability, vertical development, bike and ped, those kinds of things. Equity considerations. There's opportunities for mitigation for disadvantaged communities, and CDOT and others will be working with those disadvantaged communities. So for example, one of the things we may not think about, but I think about, is when we put up noise walls, I think they should be called social justice walls, because obviously the people who have to live right next to the highway generally are disadvantaged individuals from communities that don't have the luxury to move away from highways. And those noise walls do so much more than just stop the noise. It stops some of the particulate that comes off the highway and across. You know, it contains some of the bad air that's generated when there's congestion and everyone's idling their cars. It does quite a bit. It enhances their property value to be separated safely from that. So those kinds of things. I mean, we look at projects like noise walls pretty seriously. I know all of you, Thornton and North Glen, all paid for the noise walls on the Tiger project when we did the expansion there by North Glen. I remember sitting there. I mean, we all were there, and you guys brought money to the table to pay for those noise walls, which are really social justice walls, I think. Let's see, what else? Impacts to the 10-year plan. This will be interesting. We have the 10-year plan. We've funded 4 years. We're working on year 4, but we will scrutinize each of those projects to determine how they can be improved to meet this GSG goal. It doesn't mean any of those projects will fall off. It probably means there'll be some tweaks to it. It might mean that those projects become a little more expensive. And then the cost benefit analysis is part of the rulemaking process that will be determined through this public outreach process. I think that's it. Is there anything else? No, there you go. So anyway, it's interesting. If you're interested in this, if you want more information, please go to the website at CDOT. If you want to participate in Gene, I really encourage you to do this, to virtually or in person participate and talk about the things you've talked about here. They need to hear it. The rulemaking group need to hear it. The environmentalists need to hear it. And yet I'm hoping that we'll all be in support of this, because there may be some very positive things that come out of this. And for heaven's sakes, if we can have better air quality through this, and if we can think about innovative strategies to reduce the emissions through a number of things, that's important too. I know that the goals are also predicated on the expansion of EV use. And they do believe that in the next 10 years or so, the saturation of EVs will be so much greater that we'll notice a change in air quality beginning. And then as community fleets, city fleets change out, one of the things we heard a lot about was big mowing operations for parks and rec and developments that mow. That if they change out their mowers from the machines they use now that are gas guzzlers and emit emissions, that can be a huge savings in greenhouse gas emissions. I know CDOT, it has the struggle with, we have a replacement cycle for our trucks. And we always look at, will it cost us more to replace this truck or to fix this truck? And now one of the criteria is, what will we save in emissions if we don't fix this truck but replace it? And those are the kinds of discussions we're wanting municipalities to have when they do a criteria evaluation of how do you replace your fleet. Don't just look at the monetary cost, but look at the GHG cost. So there's some practical stuff in here. It's about, I think the GHG rulemaking packet is about 28 pages long. It's not insurmountable. What's interesting about this packet is there's a 3-page preamble that calls out why we're doing this. And that's unusual in rulemaking, but it was something that everybody felt was important to say why we're doing this, not just that we're doing this.
Okay.
All right.
Any other comments or questions for Karen? All right. Thank you, Karen. It was very interesting.
You're welcome. How interesting, right? And I think NADA tomorrow, Rebecca White is going to do a quick GHG overview, and any really specific questions, Rebecca or Teresa Takuchi, who's our greenhouse gas expert, could answer those, but she'll probably give you a similar presentation to what I just had there. But she'll be there to talk about greenhouse gas. I think that's it. We still are struggling with transform. I hate not to do a transform. I don't think we can do one in person. We've talked at the staff level. We just don't think that that's doable this year. We could do a virtual one. Last year was ideal because we did the North Line opening. You know, it was an ideal time to talk about what's happening with trains and federal funding for trains and the connectivity of national, regional, local trains, all of that, and a celebration of the N-Line. We're still looking for suggestions as to what we could do. It would probably be a November virtual meeting that we would set for a transform if we were to do one. The alternative is not do anything this year and then just do a big thing on our anniversary, February 1st timeframe. I just don't know. We're looking for you guys to direct us.
Well, for me, Karen, you know, it's such a lot of work for the transform for you guys, and it's really November is creeping up pretty rapidly. I'm wondering if maybe we just don't cancel it this year and do a grandiose type thing, you know, next year. That's kind of my general feeling about it. I'll open it up to the floor. Anyone else have any comments?
Yes. I don't know if anybody has seen it, but you remember several years ago, we saw the autonomous little shuttle service that RTD. It was very surprising that up in Golden, they have some of these going from the School of Mines down to downtown Golden. That stuff that we saw years ago is now becoming implementable.
Mm-hmm.
They're also doing them using the same technology up at Yellowstone to get people around so that they don't drive so much. So technology is coming to be commonplace, and I hope it's faster.
Thanks, Jean.
So that's Easy Mile, and Kyle has been introduced to Lauren Isaacs, and I know you talked to Easy Mile. Easy Mile is very, very expensive to run, very, very expensive to run. And the School of Mines paid for that project. It's interesting that you say that because we did see that presentation. We had the Panasonic presentation when we all went and we saw the connected vehicles and all of that. You know, we could always have Lauren come and talk about Easy Mile. I'm sure she'd be happy to do that. Whatever you guys want. And I see Kyle's hands up.
Kyle?
Yeah, I just wanted to two things, comment on what Joyce mentioned. I think I kind of agree that November is coming up pretty quickly, and maybe this is a year to punt and we concentrate more on what's happening next year. So that seems about right. And to follow up with what Jean mentioned, yeah, I love the idea of seeing some of these technologies put into practice, maybe expanding it just a touch. There was all the promise of the autonomous vehicles, and it was all the rage a number of years ago. And then the only headline I've heard recently about that is, oh my goodness, there have been some Tesla crashes because people relied upon the autonomous technology. So, you know, it might be, and again, this is sort of piggybacking on what Jean said, maybe there's an opportunity to say, okay, there was all this promise, however many years ago, that may have been 5 years ago when we had the guy saying, oh my gosh, the world's going to change with autonomous vehicles. Well, what is the state of the art in autonomous vehicles now? Is the promise still there? Is it further delayed than what we thought it was going to be? So that could be an interesting topic. And then one that I just dawned on me too is sort of, and this ties into the greenhouse gas piece, what is the state of EV adoption within the Front Range, and what are the proposals to further that adoption? And I'm also thinking about the EV charging network. Where are we compared to where we need to be to make meaningful dents into our greenhouse gas emissions? Something like that. It's still a little amorphous in my head, but just a thought.
Yeah, I think that those are good topics. You know, it's interesting with the EV charging thing. CDOT is putting in chargers. They have a contract to put some chargers in on their scenic byways. They have a number of scenic byways in Colorado. And one of the reasons we can't put them in at rest stops, and we're having a struggle trying to find enough money to fix rest stops and keep them open and all that, is because you're not allowed to put any commercial stuff on a rest stop, in a rest stop. It's federal regulation, and they're trying to get that changed. We're trying to find a way to partner with, have partnership opportunities to bring money to the table for rest stops. I just went down to southern New Mexico, and all the rest stops from here to the state border were closed. And partially they're closed because there's a lot of destruction. The system for flushing and water are antiquated. There's trash everywhere. They don't have anybody to maintain them. They don't have the budget. And you go to New Mexico and there's beautiful rest stops, and there's rest stops all the way down. New Mexico has taken that on. In every Transportation Commission meeting, I talk about our rest stops and why can't we partner with Colorado Tourism? Why can't we find a way to put these chargers at rest stops? Why is it that we're investing this money in scenic byways? And part of the reason we're investing in scenic byways is to get people to spend their money in these small little towns that are on the edges of these scenic byways as an economic stimulation. So, I mean, I think all of those are interesting, and there is we do have quite a lot of information on what we think EV adoption saturation is going to be year by year. And I don't know, Kyle, do you drive up in this area very much, or are you still pretty much located downtown?
Still downtown, but go up and down, up and down.
Yeah, because I'm
amazed.
I'm amazed at the number of Teslas in my region here. From about 144th up to Highway 7. Anytime I'm on Huron, I pass 2 or 3 of them. There are a lot. We've ordered Volkswagen ID4. They thought they'd get it in by October. I don't know if they'll get it in yet. So partially the adoption is based on not having enough product, right? There just isn't enough product available for the demand. But I think that's a great, something we can certainly look at as a, you know, even if we don't do a transform, we could certainly have a presentation on this at Smart Commute.
Okay. Anyone else want to jump in?
I was just going to weigh in on that and say the same thing. I think November's awful this year because it's an election year. We don't really know.
Oh, forgot about that. Forgot about that.
For sure. Yeah. So I would say just skip it and do the anniversary. Makes more sense. Maybe by then we'll be able to meet in person again.
Yeah. Well, so we typically don't have a November meeting, and we could cancel that one. My question is, do we cancel the Smart Commute meeting for the 22nd or postpone it to the 29th? What's the flavor here?
So Karen, as far as what's on your plate, is there anything that we need to discuss in September that you're thinking that can't wait? That would be one of the factors. For me, I mean, going to the events, they're great, you know, and just having everybody be part of it. But I think part of it is what you have on your plate and what you need to share with us. So
Yeah.
Also, it's CML, so most people aren't. I mean, I'm not going to be around for I won't be around for this meeting because I'll be at the CML conference.
Well, we're happy to do an update like we did last month, where we just give you an email blast of all the stuff that we've been doing. I don't think there's anything critical. We're not adopting the budget yet. That'll be October, December, whenever we get that put together. I don't think there's anything we need a lot of direction on. We'll probably just be wrapping up the year's activities. We'll have more information for you on our 60K thing that upgrades our website and starts us on the bike map project, the bike gap map project. So if you're okay with that, we can just do, I can just send, like I did last month, just send you, you know, here's our balance in our treasurer's account. Here's things that we're doing, and then we could just go to October for our next meeting, not have one in November and then have a December meeting.
I think that's good. I thought I saw a thumbs up from Kyle. So
good.
All right.
And Jessica gave a thumbs up, and Jean.
Yep.
Jean, you have something to say?
Are we finished with the business?
Yes, I think that was all I had. I just wanted direction, so.
I would like to, I'd like to seek approval to use the word smart commute on some safety vests to give to Gene Shreves on the bicycles, the e-bikes. And because it is a name that is owned by Smart Commute, I've worked out a situation where I can get these vests, and somebody I know can silk screen on Smart Commute on the back of them, and I'd like to get the permission to use that.
Okay. So what are the logistics of all this, Karen? I mean, can we legally, I mean, you know, I guess we can give it permission.
Sure. I would say we probably want to keep it in the block for like the where you see Smart Commute Metro North. We're just going to call ourselves Smart Commute pretty soon. But if you just keep it in that block font, so that it's the same as what we have, I think that's great. And since you're using them for the e-bikes, Jane did mention to me that you were going to buy some or provide some safety vests for the participants of the e-bike program. I don't see any issue with that. Has anybody else got heartburn over that? I don't think it's a.
No, I don't.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing that, Jean.
Thank you.
Right. Is there anything else from the board? No? So we will adjourn until September.
No.
No? October?
October.
October. Never
But
mind.
I'll send an update in September. And then we're going to let you know where we're going to be for Bike to Work Day. Yep. I know in the past, Joyce, you've always come to the North Glen one, and we've seen you, Jessica, and you know, there's going to be one at St. Anthony North, and I know Jean shown up before. And if we do anything with Baseline, if Baseline's doing a Bike to Work event, we'll let all of you know where they are and what time they are, so you can show up if you'd like to. They're always fun events, and we like to get pictures and recognize everybody. So, all right.
That sounds good. All
Thank
right.
you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you next time. Okay. Bye-bye.